thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you for being here and for having me here. Thanks, Melanie. It's really a pleasure. As you heard, my background has been in theater, all of my professional life has been in theater, and having founded my own cultural organization, it is cultural diplomacy that I really care about and I want to talk about as a way to promote a positive image of the country. And the premise of this proposal is that I consider the Greek Cultural Center to be really one of the most vibrant and creative currently in Europe. And this is evidenced not only by the proliferation of groups, performances, artists, new venues that still are happening in the city, but also by highly educated artists, curators, scholars that work in the cultural sector in the country, and also network with organizations and institutions in Europe. Examples is the Athens Sagittarius Festival, the National Theatre of Greece, the International Dance Festival of Kalamata, all of which are really thriving and have connected Greece with peers abroad. However, I think that not unlike other sectors of the Greek economy, a lot of investment has been placed in importing culture into Greece from Europe, but not exporting Greek cultural products. And this is what I want to talk about. I still think that the opportunities for bringing Greek contemporary culture to the international scene remain limited. I consider Greek culture to be a highly exportable product that can have a very positive impact on improving the country's international image, and therefore I think that the energies of the public and private sectors should be focused to facilitate and enhance the international presence of Greek arts while promoting cultural entrepreneurship domestically and abroad. And in this way, I think that not only we're putting forward the positive face of Greece, that of talent, creativity, hard work, and world-class results, but we're also envisioning the cultural sector as an area of growth and job creation. And the present time is actually really beneficial in a way for us because the economic crisis has placed a lot of international interest on Greece right now, the contemporary culture of the country, on the people of the country and how they live their lives. So it's an opportunity that we have to take advantage of. And there is at the same time a new wave of artistic creation in Greece that it is centered around questions of identity, who we are, who have we been, and where are we going. And therefore it has been met with a lot of interest in the international scene. So I'm proposing some ideas of actions, of things that we can improve, and this is based mostly on my experience here in New York. So it is very much within a US context, and I'm pretty sure that some of these ideas can be applied elsewhere as well. A first thing is that we have to learn from other countries, and very much so from our neighboring Mediterranean countries. Right now, for instance, Spain and Turkey are leading really dynamic and really impressive campaigns to promote their national cultures in the US. They create partnerships with institutions in US, and they create a lot of opportunity for their artists. So a study of how these people do it, because you know that Spain is in equal economic problems as in Greece, but they still do it. So how do they do it? What are their strategies? All these things will be very helpful for the Greek institutions and organizations to learn from them and see how we can promote cultural activities. We have, the second point is we have an ample human potential. So we can use this by creating internships and temporary positions for cultural entrepreneurs, cultural agents, artists in various organizations that can be dedicated to monitoring and promoting Greek culture in Greece and abroad. And this, of course, hopefully when things get better, can lead to actual job creation. A third point, a point that is related to this is that promoting Greek culture does not necessarily have to be costly. There are basic things by using technology that we can do and we should do. A central website, a central blog, Facebook page, these very basic things that can function as hubs of information that will be promoting Greek culture. That can be done really at a very low cost. It is very important to facilitate the access of Greek artists in Greece and abroad to projects that promote international mobility. I'll give you an example. As far as I know, Greek artists are the ones that have take least advantage of European funding projects that send artists abroad. Why would that be so? We have to give incentives to private foundations and public organizations to bring Greek culture abroad, facilitate the presentation and travel of Greek artists, and support not only Greek nationals necessarily, but also foreign presenters who are willing to show Greek work. Another thing that I consider to be very important is to strengthen the links between artists, institutions, and university partners abroad. We can initiate collaborations between the private and public institutions and academic units on topics of contemporary arts and culture. For example, organization of talks and events on contemporary arts, co-production of cultural activities. This happens to a certain degree. For example, the Onassis Foundation is a foundation that has a lot of links to academia, but it is more tailored to the specific interests of that foundation. But this has to be expanded to include contemporary culture as a whole. Equally, we have to enhance the presence of Greek cultural criticism in international scholarly journals. I'll give you an example. I've been in academia and in scholarly research for 10 years. I have never ever seen an article or a paper on contemporary Greek drama, dance, performance, anything. On the other hand, there is, for example, a very positive new initiative. The Onassis Foundation in Greece are starting the Dance magazine, which is a new scholarly journal for contemporary dance. This is something that can be promoted and can attract a lot of interest abroad. And the last point I want to make is maybe a little more general. It is to re-envision our country's international position in relation to our immediate area. There are currently major shifts in the Mediterranean region, the economic crisis in the south, the Arab Spring, and all the political upheavals in North Africa. And these make the region particularly interesting politically, economically, and culturally. So how can Greece cooperate with its neighboring Mediterranean countries? How can we lead in cultural partnerships and exchanges using our experience as EU members? And how can we do these things in a way to start repositioning ourselves as cultural leaders in the Mediterranean region? Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you all for braving the elements and showing up. It looks like a great turnout this evening. Thank you, Melanie, for all of your efforts. It's great to be part of such an important initiative. When one is asked what comes to mind when they think of Greece, it is possible to receive a full spectrum of answers, ranging from pristine islands to food, from philosophy to crisis. All of these answers constitute what we can claim as Greek culture, a time-enduring culture with strong historical and contemporary significance that has been a source of inspiration for achievement all around the world. And when we say culture, what do we mean? According to the Cambridge University Press, the way of life, especially the general customs and beliefs of a particular group of people at a particular time. And according to the Oxford Dictionaries, the art and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarding collectively the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or society. So notions such as a way of life, art, intellectual achievement, ideas, and social behavior should be highlighted. However, over the past 3 years, Greece has been transformed from the originator of Western civilization to its scapegoat, a tiny country that was all of a sudden posing a threat of economic unrest on an international scale. So, and by public opinion, we mean the public opinion abroad, not just abroad, but also within Greece. In a speech about Greece, Peter Economides shared the sentiment that Greece is one of the greatest brands that has never been branded. And if you think about it, this is true. Greece's image abroad focuses on selective competitive advantages such as its climate, its natural beauty, its history, etc. People from all over the world want to come to Greece to visit the exotic islands or the Acropolis. And for many, it is the dream of a lifetime. But how many people visit Greece for those reasons and come back because of the people? How many tourists are moving to Greece or investing in a house in Greece? There must be something more to offer beyond Greece's amazing and rich history, its traditions, its natural beauty, that has something to do with the now. So current practices, current ideas, current lifestyle, current culture. And there's going to be a lot more. From currently, small art spaces pop up constantly in major cities. Theater groups utilize abandoned spaces to perform and educate. Companies support people in the need through well-organized and continuous initiatives. And many young people leave the big cities to invest in agriculture and farming. There is both motivation and result everywhere in Greece. It is encouraging that some media, such as Sky and Katharini, are persistently showcasing these initiatives, and there are numerous websites and social media that do the same to reach a wider audience. Examples of this include Made in Greece, which provide a database of Greek products and companies covering different disciplines. Made in Greece Plus, which showcases young Greek architectural projects. Marketing Greece and Into Greece, both which promote tourism, and Adlos, which promotes Greek excellence on the global scale. Being from a generation for whom the internet was first introduced during our teenager years, we have grown up believing that real-life experiences are critical and can formulate lifelong perceptions. And the big idea of snippets and tastings of Greece was born.
So the big idea is to celebrate the significance of Greek culture and its universal contribution in character to a unique experience. And I would like to focus on the word celebration and currency. So the desired result of the proposal, like what we would want to achieve, is to inform the public about a large segment of the Greek population that actually responds in a positive way, in a creative way to the current situation. Showcases the diversity and the competitive advantage that are available in terms of culture, human and natural resources, encourage dialogue and cultural exchange between Greeks and people all over the world, promote and facilitate investment, trade and tourism, foster collaboration, and of course boost the confidence of the Greek population who are actually suffering. The next slide, please. Who do we want to reach? Of course, there are places all over the world that there is Greek diaspora, there is a huge support from those people. There are people who love Greece and love Greece. But there is audiences who have actually been to Greece before and know what there is there to offer, and also potential audiences who know about Greece but have never been there. And finally, there are people that are quite negative about Greece and how the Greek population responds to the current situation, and we would like to convert them and try to persuade them that that's not the case. And of course, the Greek population itself. How to achieve it? We would like to suggest a sensory experience that would encourage participation from the Greeks and from people abroad. So we suggest the creation of a website that serves as a platform for the video presentation of those initiatives. And as Repower Greece has done, they have lots of videos and photographs of different initiatives that are happening now in Greece. So we'd like to have some form of an interactive dialogue that would have a specific set, so it would be like a set format. And people would be invited to include 1 minute long presentations of their product. And by saying product, I mean generally cultural product, not necessarily something that you can buy. So it's like a service, it could be a theatrical group, it could be artwork, and that could be presented as a slideshow, it could be a blank, a white text with audio. So in any case, but it's going to be an advertisement that's going to be 1 minute long, and people will be asked to present what they offer to the public. So there would be it will be like it will have the form of a game, so people will actually not know what they're going to look, but there will be a genre specification. For example, art would be the yellow, the red would be product, or would be red would be a product, the green would be a touristic place that they're promoting. So people will actually go to the website and select a genre that they like, and they will look at what they're interested in. Of course, there's going to be a space where dialogue will be able to appear. So according to that dialogue, there's going to be hopefully a whole buzz starting off about what is currently happening in Greece. So the promotion of the project will start with, of course, would include any form of traditional advertising, but the internet and social media are going to play a great role to that, to its spread. So social media links to participants' websites, blogs, ads were recorded on electronic video, Google Ads, and other products offered by Google are going to be initially used in order to create the buzz and inform people and create a word-of-mouth publicity. So a few of those products are going to be selected based in order to participate in a traveling in the traveling celebration. According to the creativity to page visitors, if there are like ways to monitor all those ways to monitor who has, from where people have visited a site, how often a site is visited. So all those are going to need to be monitored from the beginning in order to see what people in different places of the world like and what they comment on. So that will create some form of a database where the selection will start. And then, of course, ideas and suggestions from both participants and from the public could help the buzz continue and bring a sense of involvement from everybody to that celebration. So a 2 to 3 day celebration ideally would take place in a variety of locations. So in order to increase awareness, reach a wider audience, form like something more of a city happening like a festival, and showcase the diversity of the product and create a following. So, but that would need to have a narrative. Like there needs to be some form of story that links the one location to another, to another, to another. Example of locations could be cultural centers on foundation, art galleries and art centers, theaters or performing spaces, movie theaters, hotels, event spaces, and any type of place that could that has that is specifically directed to Greek culture or not. Hopefully, all of them will participate in creating some form of an event, and that could include, for example, going to an alternative cinema, movie theater place, and having Greek movies with Greek products in the cantina, Greek liquor or Greek pistachio. It could be having a wine tasting with wine from different places of Greece and complementary food products, and then having art hanging on the walls. Different collaborations that will hopefully have a multi-sensory experience. The suggested narrative, I'm going to use Stelios Rapos' quote that it's actually a commonly named quote, that Greece constitutes a crossroad of East and the West, and it's actually something that we should be proud of and we should use, but often it creates some form of confusion. So that is actually our identity incorporates elements of both, and we should actually do that. So the suggested narrative for that celebration would include, we think of New York as an example here, and we've done a map that you can actually go from east of Manhattan to west of Manhattan, having as a point of reference some important and critical cultural institutions. For example, the Met, where Maria Callas used to sing, and she got her fame skyrocketed. You can have Niakos Foundation as some form, ideally, having some form of event there. You can have the Onassis Cultural Place. There's a Kouros Gallery that's actually doing a lot of work in bringing Greek artists here. So those places would form as a form of reference and a beginning and an end to the tour. But then other places that are not necessarily Greek related should, a good idea would be part of that walk. So hopefully that will happen on a yearly basis, because there's actually a constant support and supply and demand for that, for the Greek product, would we say. So we would like to have that on an ongoing basis to remind people of what's there to be offered. So it would need to have like a weather permitting conditions in order to be able to actually take that walk. Like, you know, you can walk or you can take the animal, but it's nice to have that in a nice weather. And it will potentially affect, if it happens in the spring, it will potentially affect some people who last minute want to book their vacation. So that will not be forgotten and will actually create some form of actual bringing some tourism to Greece. So that's why.
I'm very pleased to be here tonight because Greece has been so very central to my life on the one hand, and because my concern for Greece has been growing exponentially really since 2009. But my concern goes back to, I think, the first time I ever landed in the Venizelos airport. In any case, I've been gravely distracted by the problems and have turned my attention away from ancient history to work on these issues for the last few years, and this is what I have to offer. Can we go back to the initial? Very good. I call the project Zigilada, which I would like to translate as Greece Lives. And conveniently, the abbreviation Zeta Epsilon works very well in English. Black olives. Zeta Epsilon is a plan to revitalize the Greek economy through the energy and talents of the currently unemployed. Participation is acknowledged with a living wage for all. The project is directed toward the maximization of available resources that presently lie dormant, desolate, or dysfunctional in the wake of the global financial crisis. A further objective is to forestall the privatization of inherent Greek assets by opportunistic multinational interests, since such interests are unlikely to promote the good of the country, as substantiated by historical instances worldwide. The strategy is to seek out, reactivate, and preserve time-honored folk knowledge, customs, and cultural aesthetics now threatened with permanent extinction. Targeting agriculture for Mediterranean and regionally indigenous products with a rich heritage of preparation procedures, fabulous recipes, and cultivation techniques, backed by innumerable lifetimes of accumulated know-how. Zeta Epsilon works with what is already there. Understanding the need to create infrastructure in order to develop and then to sustain an extraordinary demand for Greek traditional products. Zeta Epsilon's agricultural goals are matched by 2 research and production divisions devoted to the contemporary revival of traditional textiles and ceramics. Zeta Epsilon is bent on inspiring domestic self-sufficiency, while staging a resurgence in the quality manufacture of creative and lucrative products for export, based on craft work and technical expertise, cumulatively built up from time immemorial. It's all about new renderings of timeless designs, ideal for contemporary reinterpretation, and realizing, moreover, that even a fraction of the potential ingenuity and productivity at stake will make it possible to begin to push back against the pervasive methods of devaluating true value that proclaim there is no hope and no resources available to reverse the loss of dignity and the loss of livelihood that now define the first decades of the 21st century. Therefore, in seeking independence to the greatest extent possible from governmental as well as corporate control, Zeta Epsilon aims to institute funding through a constellation of sources earmarked for development and maintenance by a state-of-the-art technological information technologies team. And here I have to pause because this chart summarizes the core financial strategy of the project, but would require its own presentation to elaborate adequately. So, just to summarize, the main features are three. An independent online bank modeled after a very successful recent startup in Portland, Oregon. A bank that is completely online, is devoted to using its data for the benefit of the customers themselves. A bank that rejects the idea of using data to deceive customers and to make a profit off of customers' let's say, confusion or misapprehension about what's going on, and then provides entirely free services. Secondly, there's the idea of special hybrid bond issues, bonds that have some partial characteristics of government and partial characteristics of corporate bonds, but are at the same time excluded from trade on the bonds market. Suffice it to say that the core of the Zeta Epsilon project does revolve around new ideas for project backing. Most important, in the course of executing these tasks, Zeta Epsilon generates both actual and virtual communities, publishing news of its breakthroughs and unforeseen obstacles to its gathering enthusiasts, bondholders, and benefactors, and serving as a prototype for such initiatives elsewhere, harmonizing the old with the new, and in the process, rending asunder those antiquated barriers that still divide the work of the hands from the work of the mind, and isolates them both from the work of the heart. Thank you.
So I'm presenting on behalf of Malvina, and this is my presentation, the title, Our Team and Our Mission. So just as Christina said, I'm a student at Columbia College. I'm a junior. I'm studying biological sciences, and the first time I participated on a crossing with Malvina was this past summer. So first I'm going to show you a video that'll give you a little bit of background about Malvina and the work that we do and the organization itself. So over the team over there. Yeah. All the audio is written. So I hope now you have a sense of just a general outline of what Malvina does, and now I'll go more into the specifics. So Malvina is a team of Greeks and people of Greek descent, and within us there are businessmen, businesswomen, there are medical professionals that represent over 20 medical specialties, and people like myself, students, who sometimes get to go along for the ride. So the goals, the overarching goals of Malvina. So we are a nonprofit organization, and we are focused on improving the lives of these citizens, as well as upgrading their general living conditions. And we have focused specifically on remote islands, remote Greek islands in the Aegean Sea. So a little bit about our history. We have conducted crossings of the Aegean Sea for the past 18 years, and we have visited dozens of islands. And what started out humble beginnings, a team of a handful of people with a couple boats, has now, as of this past year, a team of over 50 with more than 10 boats that go around and visit the islands. And so really the specifics of what Malvina brings to all of these islands. First and foremost, we are a team dedicated to providing free healthcare to all of these islands. So the structure will be, we visit an island and we'll get there, and we will set up health clinics with all of the specialties represented, and we will see every person on that island where they would not have health care otherwise. We will conduct a single day of health screenings and see anywhere from 30 to over 200 people in that day. In addition to all of the health-related activities that Malvina conducts, we realized that there was more needs that these people had without which they would not be self-sufficient. They still wouldn't leave a quality of life that is enough. So we looked into our resources and we found that we could provide them with a lot more infrastructure that, even though it seems small scale on our lives, it creates a vast amount of difference to these people. And those things are things such as desalination plants. The man in the video, the first man that was talking, he was a citizen of the island of Sikinos, where they have to actually ship fresh water from Athens during the summer months because their fresh water runs out. And we also provide playfields and equipment. We provide classroom resources and, of course, healthcare technology that these people would not have access to otherwise. So the next steps that we see in order for these islands really to become self-sufficient, to have a quality of life that they can sustain, will really focus on creating job opportunities for these people. And it is, at first sight, seems more complicated, but for example, this desalination plant on the island of Sikinos that we have installed, not only will that provide fresh water for the people, fresh drinking water for the people, but it will provide water for agricultural ambitions that they will have. It provides a boon to their tourism capabilities, because otherwise tourists will not come to their island during the summer. If they hear that there is no fresh water, you can't take a shower, you won't come. So all of these things will, while not incredibly ambitious from our point of view, make a huge difference in the lives of these people. And also they have amazing, I experienced on these islands the delicious fish, the delicious food that they make, all of the handmade goods, and an outlet of these really valuable goods is something that these island inhabitants can't provide for themselves. And if we get the ball rolling, it could be great for them. And the last thing that I will say is also, Malvina is looking to act as an advocate for these islands in order to create greater government aid for them, because, as I said earlier, a little bit to us will go a long way to them and enable them to stay on their islands and to inhabit their homes. And this is all done in the effort to create self-sufficiency with these people in order to create a quality of life. And also, we think that this model of Greeks and people of Greek descent that are conscious of the plight of others and do what we can in order to give to others, it can be expanded, and if it is, great things can happen. I just want to say thank you to Repower Greece, to the NHSA, everybody that helped to organize this, my fellow presenters who are all doing amazing work, and Omadeo for taking me to Greece.
Thank you, Christina. Before you were giving us the speech, I heard the epitaph, and maybe more to the point, besides being in this German building, the epitaph was given at the city walls, which were uncovered by the German Archaeological Institute. And today, the place where the speech was given is literally the Zellman's in Germany. And when you come to Athens, you want to see where the speech was given by the congregation. It's in an area that's run by the German Archaeological Institute. You'd love to share it with other people. There's 20 or 30 Germans full-time in Athens trying to create this history and to share it with people. Anyway, is there a quick picture? Do I use this?
Oh, that is a history, if you'd like to.
Okay, thank you. Basically, I'm a financial person, and I'd never been to Greece, and didn't know anything at all about Greece until about a year and a half ago. When I got on the plane and went to Athens and began working on the Greek debt restructuring. This is a picture of me in March of 2012, on March 21st, which is the day after Greece was going to default. Greece owed 14 billion euro. On March 20th, we only had $1 billion in the bank, and it was my job to push the wolf away from the door and give Greece more breathing room and time to pay off the debt and to create a haircut to reduce the amount of debt. It was a fun job. I was in Greece for 9 months, and I still don't speak any Greek. And I've never been to any of those beautiful islands. I've only been in the seedy downtown Athens. And frankly, I'm going to stay there because I think there's a remarkable future there. I guess next, please. After finishing work on the PSI, on the debt reduction, the haircut, I sort of felt after 9 months like I had helped to save Greece. I needed to do something to make sure that it didn't reach that point of potential default again. I looked about. And as a financial guy, we financial people are trained to look for where you're strongest, what's your biggest element of strength. And clearly, tourism is it. Aside from the shipping industry, which is largely run offshore anyway, which ought to stay there for the good of the industry and the people who work in it. Tourism is the single largest declared source of income for the Greek economy. The problem is that every other Mediterranean country has beaches and sun. And I know the tourism minister and the people there, and it's really tough competing against Turkey and Italy and Spain and those places. Maybe strategic thinkers can help them, but at the end of the day, what really makes Greece different is being a place where democracy is created, where philosophy is created. The cultural accomplishments, next one, I guess I have to ask you to do it. The problem, though, in getting people to come to Greece to see democracy, to see philosophy, to see mathematics, Euclidean geometry, is that they're not visible. They're called intangible assets. And people can't see them today. They can't hear them, and they can't see them. And as a result, I guess next one, they don't come. I'll give you a point. This is me over here on a day during the tourist season in August, standing in the ground zero of democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, next one, please. This is the place where 2,400 years ago, the world's first democratic assemblies met every 10 days. It is absolutely amazing that I am the only person there, 500 away from the ticket booth at the Parthenon, where every year 2 million people a year come to visit. And not only that, this is good, and the typical visit today to the Parthenon, this is the Acropolis area, the typical visit to this entire zone, this is where that ecclesia, that assembly met. This was the town center of the ancient city. And your speech, I'm sorry, Christina, was given right here at the ancient city walls. And in fact, no one ever goes there. And the typical visit to this place is just 90 minutes. Next one please. And it struck me then that there must be some way to get more people to understand what happens here, but the problem was that there was nothing written there. And I didn't know anything because I didn't study classics or ancient history or anything. So I went around and got a lot of people to teach me what happened, and then I brought in a consultant, thank you. Next one please. Called Ralph Applebaum Associates, which is, if you've ever been to Liberty Science Center or the Holocaust Museum in Washington, or Hayden Planetarium in New York, it's the world's largest designer of non-art museums. I hate museums and culture sites. Next please. And I asked these guys to come in and tell me how could we get more income for tourism in Greece, and they said very simple, 3 words, one more night. And believe it or not, as we're going to see in a second, we can create €2 billion a year. We can grow the Greek economy by €2 billion a year by just extending the stays of the visitors that we have, not reaching for the stars for new people, but just taking the ones we've got and getting them to stay one more night. That's the name of this program, one more night, if you will. And how are we going to get them to stay one more night? Well, some of these ideas are unbelievably basic. And everyone in Greece, including Kostas, the culture minister, reminds me that we used to have a sound light show. But if you go to the pyramids, everyone there sees the pyramids twice. Once at night for the sound and light show, and then they stay over one more night for the next day and see it by day. So something as basic as a sound and light show, which I've offered to fork over $100,000 to whomever wants to go and pull the plugs and then stick it into the old systems. Next one, please. So, believe it or not, one more night of the existing visitor flow into the Athens area will result in direct spending of 430 million euros, says the group that I commissioned, the leading group at Economic Foundation called YOVE. Next, please. And the Applebaum plan was unbelievably simple. Those of you who've been to Greece, they basically said, let's just turn the visit upside down. Instead of having people come in on the south side, have them come in at the ancient city gates where they did originally. Next one. And let them spend hours walking through and rediscovering the words of Pericles. You know, whenever I'm down there at the cemetery, which is, they call it Kerakimos. How do you pronounce it? Kerakimos? Greek help me. Kerakimos. I'm lousy. Good. Everyone always tells me like surroundings, Bob. Remember, I can't remember. The key, though, is that number 2 is where he gave that speech at the entrance to the ancient city, which today is called the Kerakimos, which is where that funeral speech was given. And right outside of, and in fact, the director of that area is a German woman who's got a PhD in archaeology, the director of the German Archaeological Institute, and she wants to do something about Pericles' wife there at the ancient city walls. Apparently she was quite an interesting woman, wasn't she?
Yeah, Aspasia.
What was she famous for?
Everything, her beauty, her intelligence.
And maybe there was another side to it as well.
Like every woman, yes. Yeah.
Exactly, right. A pretty interesting woman, and believe it or not, and I said to the director there at the German Archaeological Institute, if you know all this, why don't you do it? And she says, I didn't know that I can, but maybe I should. And you know, Isaac Newton said things at rest tend to stay at rest, things in motion tend to stay in motion. Sometimes you just need someone who doesn't know anything to just say, do it. Which is, in essence, what I think the guys doing this effort are trying to do, to get people to raise their hands and say, I have an idea. Anyway, Applebaum said, let people walk along the Pan-Athenic Way, the most famous avenue in the world, which is so famous that it was written up and carved into a 390-foot frieze around the Parthenon. And 2/3 of it today is in London, the Elgin Marbles, and 1/3 is in Greece. But it's that journey from point 2 up and down and up to the top of the Parthenon that is the very subject of this most famous picture in the world that 9 million people visit per year at the British Museum. And It is absolutely awesome that it depicts things that happened along that route. How many of you here have been to Athens? Raise your hands. How many of you have walked along the Panathenaic Way from the walls up to the top of the Parthenon? You know, let me see those that have done it as it was done in antiquity. So about 20%, 1 out of 5. That's the whole point. Let's bring back, let's hear, and when we begin at the walls, let's hear Pericles with that beautiful speech. When we pass the assembly, let's hear the speeches of Demosthenes. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Demosthenes.
Okay. Next, please. But I'm just the financial guy paying for this. I'm not the subject matter expert. They came up with 10 or 11 different ways to spend our money that would basically get people to want to come to Greece, including the Museum of Democracy at the very place where democracy was created, to take the area that Plato had his academy at and rebuild it as a place where people cannot look but actually learn. Democracy's battlefields talk about, we've got a commitment from Gettysburg, which I see as the sort of spiritual sort of brother to Marathon. I just had a marathon in December, and the woman who runs Marathon has 2 degrees from this university. A delightful woman named Maria, her family name, who literally is the caretaker of the Marathon battlefield. And every day she gets 6 or 7 visitors. This year, 3 million people will visit Gettysburg, which is basically the place where the future of democracy, the future of freedom was decided. So anyway, Applebaum said we can spend between €1.1 billion and €4.3 billion on this effort, which I said spend as much as you can. Next, please. Because we're going to, the more money we spend, the more people will come. And the folks, the economic team said that if we spend between €1 billion and €4 billion, we'll get a gain to GDP between €500 billion, €500 billion and 1.8. €500 million and €1.8 billion per year, every year GDP, plus keeping the culture ministry, which will run this stuff, in mind. Next one, please. Beyond a gain in GDP, prior one, we'll also get a gain in employment. Can we go back one? Between 18,000 and 12,000 and 38,000 jobs recurring every year. Not one-time spending. And that's basically what we want. We want to put Greeks back to work. We want to get people bringing their money into Greece. Next one, please. So we want to put this together. We're going to bring in money. And actually, I think Zoe, the art historian, pre-saw maybe a lot of my thinking over here, which is to involve lots of people. The first time I said, let's do this, the culture minister in the meeting raised his hand and said, did you talk to the archives? Did you talk to Onassis foundations? And I said, no, and I'm not going to. Any idiot can find rich people. It takes genius to find lots of people with an interest in their head and their heart in subjects that change the world. So my interest here is to engage large numbers of people through, and we've already set up a not-for-profit organization in Washington, D.C., called the Classical Trust, which would be a U.S., primarily U.S. and UK and Australian-led entity, and an entity called Athens 508 BC, temporarily a Greek entity that will execute the work. Next one, please. And these entities will tap into money from what we look for to be perhaps 1 million people with an interest in these subjects who will invest in an instrument that will be rather unique but has been done before. These are people that we call future culture visitors. People with an interest in coming to sup at this table of unbelievable cultural, the democracy, the history, the cultural achievements, to visit these things and participate in them, and who will invest in this U.S. entity, which under the securities laws, these instruments don't have to register with the SEC, and this U.S. entity will drip feed the money into Greece, because people don't want to invest in a country they believe is corrupt. Most people here would probably say that the Greek government doesn't have a great track record. That's correct. So there's a need for a way to control the flow of money outside the government. But yet these are cultural elements that are of global import, but we have a technical Parthenon. Anyway, so it has to be run by the Greek government, which will this spring, I believe, pass a law that will provide that the investments will be recognized as prepayments of future taxes. So So if the people in this room are thinking that they might go to Greece the following years from now, they might have to pay taxes. Next one, for example, they might go to a restaurant. And the principle here is that the investments here will, and by the way, this instrument has been designed to get around what's called a trustee deed, a trust indenture that governs the new Greek debt, which basically says that no instrument can get in front of the people that own the current debt. So this is not a financial instrument as defined in that trustee deed, and people will basically be just prepaying future taxes that they may have to pay. So say, for example, an Australian girl was born this year, and next week she's going to have her baptism. And 15 to 20 people, family, friends, come to the event, and each one of them give a gift of 30 or 50 Aussie dollars. The parents take that money and they invest it in one of these things, because I know one day that beautiful little girl, named Maria, perhaps may go to Greece. When she finally does go to Greece, after graduating from high school, she and her friends get there, they go to some dinner in a restaurant, the waiter says, that'll be €100 plus 23% VAT. Maria pulls out her card and says, 18 years ago when I was baptized, parents' friends invested, and that 300 Aussie dollars has grown to $500 at 7% a year. The waiter takes the card, sticks it in the Visa machine, the point-of-sale machine, and the guy says, you're right, you prepaid those taxes before, just give us $100 for the food, 23% of that was paid years ago. Next. And who's done this before? The answer is the state of Israel, the state of Israel bonds. Israel sells bonds, the investors have to wait 15 or 20 years to get repaid. If they go to Ben Gurion Airport, they show that they're a bondholder, and they can get repaid with shekels right then and there. They max it out at $2,500 cash per person. Israel has sold $30 billion worth of this stuff. So much so that I've enlisted the State of Israel bond selling program to help me with this initiative next. And in fact, we're going to, hopefully, if people don't object very much on both Greek, and I've been to Jerusalem, and getting the finance and the foreign ministers together isn't very difficult, because these are two democracies in the Mediterranean. So we're going to look to finance this off of what we're going to call future culture visitors, and we're going to get support for the initiative from teachers of classics. I believe that given that most of what we're selling over here is taught in schools, there's 50,000 PhD level people alone, or PhD and MA people, teaching government, teaching philosophy, classics, history, and so forth. Get these people to make their pedagogy more interesting by linking to the physical places. Next one, please. We've already, over the last couple of months, enlisted the support of the Greek government, and set up this nonprofit entity, and we're now on to get legislation enacted in Greece by the current parliament in order to make the prepayment of taxes and the movement to the secondary market of these prepayments possible. Hopefully this will be done by the summer, and we can move ahead next month, please. Anyway, in summary, to return to Pericles, he said it all when he said that the great values, the great assets of a nation are not those of brick and mortar, not concrete, but rather they're things that are woven into the lives of others. In the case of Greece, its cultural fabric is golden. This is the principle to tap this amazing cultural fabric. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Thank you all for fighting the snowstorm to be here today. When a friend suggested that they join you tonight, my first reaction was to ask, what am I going to talk about? Fear not, I can find a topic after all. I quickly identified one issue that I strongly connect to. I'm referring to the brain drain that Greece is experiencing right now. I want to clarify that by claiming to have a personal experience of the matter, I'm not claiming I'm one of Greece's brightest. But I'm friends with many of them, and I can assure you that they do not see their future in Greece. I decided to leave Greece in 2005. I announced to my friends, my teachers, and family social circle that I was going to pursue my undergraduate studies in the UK. Everybody, every single person I spoke with, told me I was crazy. They told me about the rainy English weather and the expensive life in London, and the fact that I would miss my mother's food, Even that did not deter me. Those same people now tell that I'm lucky. I get calls for advice from them, their children, their relatives, on how to make the transition from Greece to another European country or the US. I always describe some options to them. Then I repeat the same mantra. It is great to study and travel abroad, but chances are you will eventually want to return home. I belong to this group of people who want to build a future in Greece. But I know that right now, I cannot make my dreams come true in this country. Not enough jobs, very low wages, and lack of opportunities that make it almost impossible for a young adult to live independently. But most importantly, they make it impossible to dream. And there are 3 reasons behind this. 1, lack of transparency in the public sector that favors connections rather than ability. 2, a private sector that suffers from a legal framework that does not protect its labor. And 3, a taxation system that disincentivizes entrepreneurship and self-employment. It is because of these reasons that Greece is experiencing a brain drain right now. And that's a very serious problem that we need to discuss and we need to address. To reverse the situation, 2 things are required. A restructuring of the labor market and a change in mentality. As interdependent as those 2 may be, the latter is far more challenging than the former. The chances in restructuring the labor market involve protests against the privatization of the public sector, syndicates' resistance to the deregulation of the market, political rants, and the fact that if all of the aforementioned challenges are not overcome, it will be almost impossible to attract foreign direct investment. It seems like a lot of work, doesn't it? A change in mentality is going to be far more difficult. We're now used to consuming more than what we produce. We have developed strong feelings of entitlement to achievements we have not contributed to, and view work as a mundane task rather than a means towards self-fulfillment. The truth is that as soon as it became an independent state, modern Greece became dependent on loans to help meet the needs of its population. Such loans have been piling one on top of the other, leading to a population that has been living outside its means for years. The crisis is an opportunity to change the way that we think, the way that we are, and the way that we see our future. People in my generation, Greeks in their 20s, came quickly to the realization that the lifestyle they grew up wanting to become a part of is not sustainable and not attainable. However, those are the same people who are now living in Greece. They want to study and work in other countries, which offer better prospects to people with not much experience, but passion to achieve a lot. To reverse the current brain drain, Greece has to turn its labor market into a welcoming place. It needs to throw away all the elements of the Greek mentality that led to the crisis, while building upon what makes Greece beautiful, its history, the open heart of its people, and their inventiveness. So how do we move forward? This effort requires both individual initiatives and political will. Young people need to know that they can choose to do what they love, and will be able to earn a living by doing it. The dominant Greek mentality that all have to go to college must come to an end. We need good plumbers and good cooks as much as we need good doctors. The state must build technical high schools and universities with intensive and practical curriculums. There, people who are talented in professions that do not require theoretical academic studies can acquire the skills to pursue their goals. At the same time, we need parents who do not push their children to the direction of academia when this is not their calling, simply for the sake of framing a degree on their living room's wall some years later. We must move away from an education whose sole purpose is the entry in a good university, to an education that focuses on students developing critical thinking, general knowledge, and the drive to specialize further in a field that they are passionate about. We must know our history, not the way that decades-old books teach it, but by studying different historians with different takes on the same events until we reach our own conclusions. And for that, we don't only need teachers who are willing to provide more diverse materials, but also parents who are willing to research and buy for their children a variety of history books written by people with different backgrounds. As young people, we must know that our desire to create and innovate will be welcomed by the market. This means that the state has to protect investors by devaluing the importance of political ranks. Policymakers must create a legal framework that encourages transparency in the capital market, punishes corruption, and enforces the punishment. But individual investors must also be prepared to believe in young people with radical ideas. We must know that Greece will welcome us back. There are young Greeks all around the world who want to make a change in Greece. Look around you. They are on the seat next to yours. If you ask them, they will tell you, I want to be a painter, I want to be a writer, I want to be a teacher, I want to be an engineer, and I want to be in Greece. All we need to do is make Greece a place where every young person can dream the impossible and make it possible. It is the aspirations of the young that will show us a way out of the crisis. What we must do is show them a way back to Greece. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. Thank you for everyone for staying this late through the blizzard. It's definitely not sunny in LA. So without further ado, let's start this presentation. History, meaning Greece. If you could move on to the next slide. I'm going to ask everybody to just imagine the Acropolis transformed into a chic pop-up hotel. An international music festival taking stage in Delphi. Imagine like a, let's go back. Thanks. So imagine like Coachella happening in Delphi. Next slide, please. 12 luxury yurts on Mount Olympus, inspired by the gods. Being shipwrecked on Zakynthos, survivor style. 300 renowned chefs featured at the Olive Greece Food and Wine Festival in Mysta. Women visiting Mount Athos without stepping foot on it. Here's what I propose. For the Greek government to leverage this country's iconic gems and cultivate novel experiences for Greeks and tourists to enjoy. So how are we going to do it? As long as we're granted temporary permits to bring these ideas to life, in collaboration with partners and sponsors, that's how we can start tackling these things to repurpose Greece's historical and architectural gems. Develop partnerships with leading flash sale sites to publicize and book these limited time experiences. Who do we collaborate with? We collaborate with leading local and global brands, corporations, architects, designers, creatives. We've been hearing so many people's ideas today, which are pretty much highlighting the same sort of leaders. And it's easy to go, talk to a corporation and ask for money. You just need to have the clearance, the green light. So I'm asking for the green light to go to Grec Hotel, Cocomat, Frank Gehry, Dimitris Papagiannou, who put together the Athens 2004 opening ceremonies and closing ceremonies, the branding campaign, visitgreece.gr. When do we do this? I say every summer, for 2 weeks. Why do we have to wait for an Olympiad so that we can showcase Greece and what it has to offer? You don't have to. It's already there. What's this mission? The mission is to present the world with an avant-garde Greece and inspire countries to develop a new kind of tourism. Why? Well, we want to create good publicity worldwide, because it's definitely been in the newspapers and on the news and on the net. Ooh, there's a crisis in Greece. There's a crisis in Greece. Well, where are you going to go for your honeymoon? Oh, we're thinking about going to Greece. Oh, isn't it horrifying there? There's a recession. People are poor on the streets. Listen, from being from California, there's a recession there too. You can smell it, you can see it, but people still come. There's sunshine, there's entertainment, there's good food. It's California. No one can ever take that away. Can we go back? We stall. There's resurrecting the nation's ethos. I call my cousins, they have so many PhDs, and they're cab drivers. My other cousins, they're knocking down olives from the village. They're using our plots of land that we're not doing anything with, and planting olive trees and trying to make oil, selling it at wholesale for 10 cents, a barrel, something ridiculous. So the ethos is super low. This stuff like this, where you leverage tourism, which is 15% of the GDP, as was noted earlier, this is a new kind of tourism. It creates impact for 2 weeks every summer. The other reason is to generate revenue. What better way to collaborate with brands and companies and showcase the many talents of Greece than to use the touristic platform? This is an experiment. We learn from experiments. If a certain ancient Greek citizen didn't, take a bath in a bathtub, he wouldn't realize that there was buoyancy. Sometimes it's like right in front of you. You just have to kind of think about it, be inspired, and do your make mistakes. And I don't think that this is a mistake per se. It's a leap of faith, working with what you already have and learning from it, and then doing it better the following year, the year after that. There's plenty of treasures in Greece. Every 2 weeks, for 2 weeks every year, I'm sure we can come up with something. I'm only going to take 1 more minute, maybe or 2 of your time. If you can go back to the slides with the images where we're at the Acropolis. It's slide 4. Okay, so I'm not crazy. I just need a permit, or we need a permit, to go to the Acropolis and say to the government and say, Ministry of Tourism, Culture, guess what? Acropolis is going to be open for business, but we're going to get this really great architect, we're going to get this really great designer from Greece or from Europe or from wherever, and we're going to do these pop-up hotel experiences. You do a penthouse, you do a regular room, you do a deluxe room, you use flash sale sites like Urban Daddy or Gilt or Jet Setter or TripAdvisor, something unique, and you sell these experiences. And if during that time, when you're in Greece during the summer, the next one please, there happens to be 3 hours out of Athens, a music festival where people are camping in the amphitheater of Delphi, or watching Lady Gaga, Madonna, I don't care who, you do an amazing music festival in this setting, it could become an annual event. Next one, Mount Olympus. It's not the biggest mountain. It's it's an easy mountain to kind of climb. Scandinavian tourists look for yours. You go to an iceberg over in Greenland, and you pay tons of money to stay in a yurt in freezing cold. Why wouldn't you want to do something great in Greece where you can see the water from the mountain? Next one, please. The shipwreck. Everybody knows Survivor. If you tell them, hey, there's Shipwreck Beach, we're going to wreck the boat, and you have to have rations for a week, and we're going to provide you this avant-garde touristic experience that no one else can do. Why not? It's not a big deal. It's not going to cost a lot of money. So the next one, you get 300. Why? Because this is near Sparta. It's kind of cool. And you do a food and wine festival, and it's very simple. It's an abandoned village. Get a permit. It's not brain surgery. The United States has to pay lots of money to create events like this. Next one. Okay, this one's a little crazy. So, from what I know, as an Orthodox Christian, no woman has stepped on Mount Athos because we want to honor the Virgin Mary. She's the only woman that stepped on there, and they want to honor that. Apparently, that's what I've been told. So, there's only lots of men on this peninsula. There's plenty of helicopters, there's plenty of gliders, there's plenty of other things that we can come up with where you can hover women over Mount Athos. Not necessarily in the monasteries, but to have a very unique tour with a hot air balloon, or you're still going to honor it, but you're not necessarily going to step on the lemon. I'm not thinking with I'm not a brain surgeon, and I'm not a financial guy. I'm an ideas guy, and I think this is the time during a crisis to think outside the box and just go for it and not seek for permission from anyone else. And maybe the Greek government's not going to be gung-ho about something like this, but maybe it should start evaluating doing things that it hasn't been doing. And we as diaspora, Philippines, Americans, I think it's really important that we do what we want to see in our own country and pay for it and enjoy it and create traditions and enjoy and celebrate Greece for what it is. Thank you so much to everybody for listening.
Even if Christina hadn't told you I was a journalist, I guess you would have guessed it by the attention-grabbing title that promises to solve Greece's problems in 7 minutes. I'm not going to do that, actually. I'm just going to try to propose to you an idea that I'm working on right now at the Business School. We're trying to organize a study tour to Greece for the first time ever. I will tell you why the very next slide. So is this Greece? That's certainly the idea that a lot of my colleagues at school have. A lot of the professors also share this idea. I remember I was taking this accounting exam last semester, and my really cute professor, and very, very nice guy, comes to me and he says, "Katerina, are you here? I thought you were going to throw stones in Athens," because apparently there was like rioting on the streets that specific moment in Athens. I mean, I didn't know about it. He knew. Can we move on? Thank you. So I know better than that. I know that race is not only about rioting. I know that being there for the past 15 years, like working there actively, I know how hard it is. I know that a lot of people have been trying really hard to avert the situation that we're in today. I know that they're still trying to do it. I specifically know of people who are working with their companies, trying to make ends meet. My friends, who, a couple of them actually had heart attacks because, you know, they couldn't make the payments and then the tax, and then they actually have heart attacks these days. But you know all these things. Greece is the birthplace of democracy. It was, it is, it will always be. Greece has an unparalleled legacy. It had, it has, it will always have. Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, you meet them every day if you're a Columbia student. When you go to the Butler Library, you see their names over there. You go to the Law Library, you also see the statue of Sophocles, Demosthenes, Aeschylus, or Euripides, or both. And of course, the unique landscape. And it's not too hard to sell this to tourists, is it? I mean, it's not really too hard. And I've heard amazing ideas, great imagination, imaginative projects that I hope and dream will continue and prosper. Tourism is a big part of Greece, and I think it can be much bigger. But for me right now, being a business school student, there is a bigger challenge of that. And that is to actually attract investment in Greece, change the perceptions about the Greeks being lazy. I know I wasn't. And really try to change the perception and share our knowledge of what we know that Greece can be with the rest of the world. So our best. So what I'm doing, very little thing. Can we go on? So I'm organizing this trip with a very, very important support of Professor Charles Calamiris from the Columbia Business School. It's the first trip that we're organizing in cooperation with the Caesar Institute of International Business. We're taking 24 Columbia MBA students to Greece during March. We're going to show them around. We're going to show them the biggest companies in Greece, talk to these people, you know, fire face, fully, hopefully, among resorts who have just opened a new project in Hermione, in Porto Kelly. National Bank of Greece, which is merging with the FC Eurobank these days. And we'll meet Columbia MBA alums. You know, we'll show them that Greece is not what they only see in the news, but more to it. And I guess the idea is to show them, to meeting with executives and policy makers. Hopefully we'll have a meeting with the finance minister as well. We're working on that. And studying how Greek businesses are weathering the storm, because really this is a unique, for business people, I mean, how bad can it get? I mean, if you're a business person right now in Greece, you really have to adjust your strategy. And this is a great case study for them to study what they can do or cannot, for that matter. And of course, provide the context within which to understand Greece and get, hopefully, over the misconceptions about the country. Okay, now with the front part. So this is the logo of CBS. Columbia Business School. Do you know what it is? Well, apparently, Columbia Business School has a patron deity, patron god, and that's Hermes. Hermes was the god of communication, commerce, and entrepreneurship in ancient Greece. The Greeks for centuries lived up to those values. They made money this way even before they were liberated from the Ottoman Empire. They supported the revolution. They became great ship owners. Even within Greece, we have inside Greece, we have so many Greek businesses, more than any other country in Europe, I believe, as a percent of the economy. So entrepreneurship runs in our blood. We may have forgotten for the past 20 years or so for specific cultural, political, social, you name it, reasons. But it's time to reinvent it, to bring it back to us, to repower it. Μετακένωση, Koreans would say. And what a great way to do it than by making this trip an annual event that we might need some support there actually from maybe a couple of foundations or some great businesses. The South Koreans, for example, they do it every year with a generous gift from Samsung. The private sector could help in that matter. We need Greek students who will be happy to participate and organize this trip after I'm coming from here, like next year. We need alumni to cooperate with us. But I think it's a worthy cause. And if all goes well, it can actually, even be expanded beyond CBS to other great MBA schools around the country, the US, I mean. I think that changing the perceptions of these people, who will be the future leaders, business leaders of the world, really, is the best investment you can do in changing the perception about Greece. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for proving that Repower Greece is far more important than a snow blizzard. I think only that is a media campaign by itself. I also think that you said everything by yourself, so perhaps you have that. I'm extremely privileged to be here. I'm extremely privileged that I've heard so many interesting ideas. And to me, it's very important that you devoted the time not only to come to the event, not only to listen to the discussion, not only to get interested in the project, but you actually spend more time coming up with ideas, with suggestions. One of the biggest problems that, at least in my country, in our country, we have been facing for so many years was the fact that we have been enjoying the comfort of the chair, judging, criticizing everything, but we never tried to do something beyond that. I know that it's getting very late, so I would like to tell you a couple of things for Repower Greece. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I will try to tell you exactly what we try to do and why your presence here is so important and why we hope that leaving this room tonight, Repower Greece will be equally your own program, your own project. And then I will be happy to answer to any discussion, to any questions that you might have with regard to our effort. We started Repower Greece about 18 months ago, basically because we felt that it is we, the people, who have to redefine, portray, narrate our country as we believe it is, and not as it has been portrayed over and over again in the last 3 or 4 years from the international media, in light of a systemic crisis that is beyond our understanding perhaps, and most of the times from people that have their own biases, interests, perhaps objectives. We started Repower Greece basically feeling that if we want to address negative stereotypes, what we need to do is to bring together our ideas, our expertise, our professional background, ideas as crazy as one can think. I think you said it all with Mount Athos and water balloons. I'm great on that. But to blend them all together and actually to try to prove that today we have the power to move beyond government, beyond ministries, beyond a broken system that actually cannot be relied that it will fix itself, so it will fail. So our mission, our objective was actually pretty simple. We believe, and I'm sorry if it sounds arrogant, that it has a strategic impact on our country. If we want to do rebranding, some of you mentioned it, if you want to attract tourism one way or the other, if you want to push for investments, if you want to expand our exports with our beautiful Greek products, if you want to sustain or enhance bilateral relations with friends and allies, regardless of your objective, the first thing, in our opinion, is to be able to restore your credibility, to be able to introduce yourself, to be able to know that your counterparty will judge you with regard to what you are and not with regard to what has been listened. Now, to do so, we believe that the only one who can achieve it, it is us, the people. The people of Greece who might be frustrated, disappointed, I don't know, down to our knees. But the last 3 years, we have seen a shift, which in my opinion is of monumental importance, that nowadays, the people of Greece, they realize that if there is any way to move forward, that will happen by working together. And that will happen by working beyond the government, beyond the ministry, beyond the public sector. So people of Greece actually have started doing it. Now, one thing that we believe is the most important element to be able to restore our credibility is to demonstrate that. Because at the end of the day, we have very beautiful pictures here, and we all know about those very beautiful pictures. And it's true. We have beautiful landscape, culture, tradition, anything, you name it. But at the end of the day, I believe most of the people that have embarked our journey believe that the real value, the real competitive advantage of our country is its human capital. It's our kids. It's equally your generation that you did so excellent presentations today, just like my 4-year-old daughter. So the idea is how we can move forward by empowering you not to get absorbed by that negative spiral, and at the same time to drag us with you and everyone to move forward. So what we chose to do is to capitalize upon the elements of public diplomacy and build Repower Greece as a platform, actually, where we get together, we unite voices, ideas, again, expertise inside, and instead of raising our voice louder than those that say that Greeks are lazy, greedy, failed, I don't know what else, to gather examples, stories, facts that actually prove that. And actually, our background as communication strategists, having worked in that field for other countries or for other programs, it demonstrates that the only way that you can actually address the perceptions of people is by placing next to the negatives, next to the ugly stuff, the good ones. Now, we believe that in Greece, just like any other place, and I think the United States a few years ago had that issue as well, cannot be defined by the failures, the incompetence, and the special interests of the few, but rather than by the creativity, the talents, the achievements, the strengths, the spirit of the many. And again, I'm sorry if it sounds arrogant, I'm not saying like that. The majority of the Greek people are the second. So what we need to put that on that table, that big table of images, of experiences, of feelings, of biases, of views, and then we let the people judge by themselves. They can very easily say that, you know what, I don't want to do investments in Greece, I don't want to go and visit Greece, I don't care about the Panathinaik walk, I don't care about the marbles, I don't care about your culture, but you will say that once you know the whole story. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that we believe in Repower Greece, that we can do everything by ourselves. That doesn't mean that we will save the country. Actually, we believe that we won't do that. Actually, we believe that anyone who feels that he has a great idea and that he will save the country, he's not a target. If there's any way that actually we can save our country, which is actually pretty superficial, because what we all want to do is save, the future, our kids, is by working together. It's by uniting these initiatives. We're focusing on public diplomacy. That means that we speak with colleges like Columbia because we feel that by addressing that issue to you, to your generation, where you have fresher ideas, you're not that biased. Tomorrow, when you will become leaders, regardless of whatever you will choose to do, it will be easier to look things the right way. We also approach international think tanks and public policy making groups because we believe that, in contrast to Greece, this is where actually policies are drawn in other countries. Now, that doesn't mean that that thing can actually do everything by itself. We need also other initiatives, and we're glad that exist. But again, we need to bring together everything as much as possible. Now, what exactly is that? What is the message that we carry? What is that we have seen through Repower Greece, through the Repower story? Is that people, companies, the society, organizations are moving forward with a renewed mindset. I might be wrong, but in my opinion, today, what it takes for the international community to allow Greece to introduce itself is to see that actually the people of Greece carry a different mentality than the one that led us today. And obviously, it's not everyone who was prime minister or banker or greedy entrepreneur or lazy public servant. But I'm sorry if someone might disagree with me. I believe that somehow we all have shared in that plane. Because even myself, who I believe that I didn't do anything wrong, up to a point, I could have done something. And I didn't. Now, what we do is we bring those stories, and those stories actually demonstrate that the whole society is moving forward. From huge multi-million businesses like in the tourism industry, like in Costa Navarino, in Peloponnese. It's not the fact actually that they are building or they build a tremendous project, it's how they build it that actually reflects those different mentalities. It's the fact that they invested in the local culture, nature, history, in the local agriculture, and they put those elements in their project. Now, the success of Costa Navarino relies on the success of the local community. And the success of the local community relies also on the success of Costa Navarino. And this is actually redefining the essence of tourism regional development. Now, even better, that actually is moving, as an example, to other startups in tourism. So a new mindset has emerged with regard to our heavy tourism industry. But tourism is not our heavy industry, because in my opinion, the magnitude of every industry is how we drive it. So you see, in the last 3 years, another heavy industry emerging, that of youth entrepreneurship. I think it was mentioned before. We have a skyrocketing in new startups, in new businesses. And some of them are related with information technology, with innovation, with people who want to believe that they will become the new Facebook. Great. But at the same time, we have a lot of people with esteem and unique degrees, like the ones that you get here from Columbia, that instead of doing the mistake that my generation did, where everyone wanted to become executives, they now go back to their villages and they rediscover the potentials and the opportunities of agriculture in our land. And actually, we have also established companies that they do that. We have is also helping us. We have a big number of wineries. We have snail farms. We have named it, we have it. Now, what's the difference with these guys? Is that instead of doing what it has been happening for many, many years, they invested in new technologies, in high quality, in high aesthetic, in research around the world, and they're redefining the way Greek products get into the international arena. You want to know more about the new mindset? These guys actually build programs that now empower young entrepreneurs to follow their path and to share their experience and their contacts. I met before I leave for this road trip with the owner of Yale, and he actually has on his website all his contacts of his wholesalers and business associates around the world. A few years ago, that would be considered sensitive information, and he wouldn't share it. The people have realized that in order to move forward, they have to move forward together. Now, Yale actually is doing something even more important. They built a new program, launched, I think, a week ago, where they sell a specific olive oil here in the States, and the revenues of it will finance a special fund that will finance new startups in Greece, in the agribusiness sector. I don't know if you agree, but I don't believe that we have seen similar mindset in the past years. So to me, this is a tremendous asset. Things are changing. You wanna check another area? Cutting-edge technologies. Solar power. Greece is number 6 global power. Yes, it relied partially in significant subsidies from the European Union. But instead of what was happening before, where we were getting subsidies from the European Union and no one knows exactly where they are, now actually you have tangible things. The most important thing, the society is changing its mindset. We have, for the first time, the private sector, the citizens, the organizations, the NGOs, the universities working together to address critical issues, from needs in tourism, in culture, to needs in welfare and social care. And actually, we have seen cases where government cannot support now the limited resources that have left. The society has achieved great. Another example, biggest example, most important example for me, the education. You can see schools, private and public, in Athens and in remote villages in the mountains of Crete, where actually you can see a tremendous alliance between parents and teachers. And they put together the limited resources that they have in providing their kids with new tools. So we have there is a village in northern Britain in Crete called, I'm sorry I forgot, called Kefalas, believe it or not. A local teacher, a public teacher, went there. I won't even dare to tell you what a public teacher in Kefalas in Repo gets every month as salary, and whether he gets it or not. And he actually arranged with the local parents. I remind you, mountain village in Crete, not in Psychiko or Philotheo or Kifiskia in Athens. And they bought, I don't know, high-tech screens and all the things that a modern, advanced school has. They throw out all the old offices and desks and I don't know what, and they build an environment where actually kids feel that this is their playground. And they're doing it together. And actually, you know what? There isn't anything worse, anything more difficult than to deal with the Minister of Education. They didn't care. They did it by themselves. Now, if you think that we only gathered those stories, and this is what we try to tell you, you can also check macro numbers. For the last 3 years, a tremendous increase in exports, an increase in new businesses, an increase in cutting-edge technology. Those 3 years, that, as very wisely one of the presenters saw the picture of the riots, the international community thought that we are in the middle of civil war, everything is in flames, and every corner has a breakdown. Now, we have tremendous problems, we have monumental challenges, it will be ugly, it will get more ugly, and many people are suffering. But it's not the way that we presented. At the same time that many people are suffering, at the same time, they gather their strength and they move forward. Now, to me, being an entrepreneur with my own business for 15 years, if I have to choose from a thriving guy who is in a huge corporation, but he actually didn't win every big battle in his life, or any big battle in his life, or someone who is struggling, who is suffering, but he has such potential, I'll go and invest there. And especially in a period where you have emerging regional and international challenges that dictate that you need the people that can actually fight. Those actually periods with the immense challenges dictate that you cannot wait. And I'm telling you that because, as I said before, we don't feel that we can achieve everything by ourselves. We need young, bold, dynamic political leadership that will continue the structural reforms. Obviously, we need to find a way to have that good investment and taxation law, because the environment for entrepreneurship is very difficult. But allow me to tell you the following. It's difficult. It's not impossible. And anyone who knows about international business, they know that there are many countries with difficult investment environments. We also need new institutions that will renew our value system, that will confront the negative societal byproducts of the crisis, extreme groups, rise, extreme voices, xenophobia. And we need the EU to meet its structure of laws that allow an unprecedented youth unemployment ratio to rise in Europe. But I believe that today, in these times, we have a monumental opportunity to move beyond waiting for these tasks to be completed by those people and to do things by ourselves. We were at CCNY today. There was a professor there who had a tremendous idea with regard to healthcare on an issue which is of most importance, critical issue, and her problem was that she cannot find a way to deal with the Minister of Health. I fully respect it. My question is, why do we need it? Equally, my question is that why do we need always to push everything through the government? There is a huge list of things that we can do together. There is a huge list of things that we can do without the government. And actually, our success will empower the government to change their mindset as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are not an organization, we don't have a board of directors. I received a question in Boston the other day, who is our president? And I said, with all due respect to the lady who was asking, that if she wishes, she can actually be the president herself. We created a platform, a civil society initiative, and it has to remain a civil society initiative because only then it will be open to everyone. We will not seek any political benefit. We don't envision ourselves to become prime ministers. We don't want to become a political party. We built it a pencil. That's it. It's a pencil. With PowerPoint, it's a pencil. You can get your pencil and write down your grocery list. You can take a pencil and write down a poem. You can write down, you can make the blueprints of your home. You can do whatever you want. Now, it's equally important, the grocery list with the poem. And this actually Repower Greece. We had 8 different ideas. We had 8 different ideas again at Harvard. We had the discussion phase at NYU with 20 students, and they were brilliant. This is actually what will change gradually and slowly the perception of the international community towards Greece. And this is why we're trying very, very much to introduce you to Repower Greece and to show you that actually everyone can get on board. Get us your help, send us your ideas, take up Repower Greece yourself. Actually, we started Repower Greece last December, and 3 days after we started, we received an email from a professor at MIT saying that he wants to organize a discussion about Repower Greece. We didn't even have our discussion event yet, and he did it. And about 1 month later, we had people here in New York deciding that they want to build a Repower Greece community, and they did. And a few months later, we had a Repower Greece committee in France, and they had an event in France. And within the first 12 months, we managed to have, I don't know, 15, 16 different international events. About 35, 40,000 people that actually are self-registered to Repower Greece and follow. About 200 appearances in international media. Without presenting a campaign, without presenting a board of directors, without presenting anything, simply by presenting another side of the story. I really believe it's imperative for all of us, to our own network, professional, social, to do that as well. This is Repower Greece. Thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here, although dubious at this time of night, so let me try to be brief. It's going to be difficult to upstage that. We've heard much from the general to the specific, and what I wanted to do is reflect on a couple of the things that we've heard, and also add a few thoughts of my own. Now, one of the things that we have seen is a discussion on how Greece is, in essence, not punching its own weight. It's not using its resources. And I think that what we saw is a useful but limited part of the problem. We've only spoken about food, about tourism, about culture. That is not the only problem, although it's certainly a big part of it. What we should also remember is that the way that we are structured, and there are some pragmatic concerns that are placed upon the very entrepreneurs that you were mentioning before, is the way that our society, our polity, links together people with interest and ambition. These entrepreneurs that we have been speaking about that are trying to see whether they can put their dreams into reality. And the problem is structural. Now this is both the good news and the bad news. It's a good news because we know what we need to do. There's a nice study that McKinsey did on Greece 10 years ahead, last year, partly pro bono. There's a study from the OECD looking at the absolutely disastrous state of public administration with all of its formalism and its problems. Just a few weeks ago we had a new report from the OECD on regulation. And if I would be as bold to say, we're not quite at the level where the bottleneck is having flyovers over Mount Athos. The challenge of Greece is not that we are not capable of having pop-over hotels in the Acropolis. And I think that when we think about what we will do with our cultural heritage, it is good not to confuse cash flow in the next few months with what we are the shepherds and the custodians of, which should be thought of not as something that will be monetized and perhaps depleted, but as something that should be preserved for the generations that follow. Something that we have had the opportunity to be able to guard, and we should be thinking about safeguarding it. We should not only be thinking about it in terms of the revenue generation. The problem that we actually have is a problem that is solvable in the basic ways that we need to address it. The challenge that we've got in Greece is less a challenge of great new ideas, but it is more a challenge of implementation. And it's interesting because in the presentations that we heard, we had a big gamut. We went from the conceptual, the theoretical, to the concrete. My only slight concern is that there was the inverse correlation between the theory of it and the age of the presenters. I expected to see the opposite, and if I may be as bold as to encourage people not only to dream, but to fight, to be specific, to articulate. I think that we have had too much talking. I think that we have had too much concept. What we do need today is much more in terms of the implementation. What we do not need is yet another meta theory of what has caused a problem. We all know it, and of course we can have wonderful dinner parties and drinks ourselves silly, discussing over it and lamenting why we're here. What we need is beta testing. What we need is the specifics. It's the prototypes. It's trying something and perhaps it will fail. It's thinking it through, which is why I thought that the more concrete ideas, like the one we heard on how exactly we can get people to stick around and spend some more money, are the ones that, at least to me, and perhaps I'm speaking as a business school professor here, are the ones that are the most exciting. The problem that we have, interestingly, is not even either of good intentions or, believe it or not, not even a problem of money. A good friend of mine, who's one of the active board members in the Nyarkos Foundation, told me that one of the problems that the foundation has today is that the $100 million that they have put aside for programs of social cohesion in Greece cannot be absorbed because most of the non-governmental organizations are mums and pups shops or places run from Psychiko and Ekali and Kifisia and Kolonaki as a byproduct of sort of social largesse. And we don't need that. We need people who can take funds where funds are available, or who can mobilize funds where funds might be available, but treated with the seriousness of a real, concrete business plan. We need to shift the focus and think about implementation. Sometimes we stop and we just say, oh, it's our southern character. It's the fact that we just enjoy the sun, we like to have an ouzo on the beach. That ain't it. And structural problems are not problems only in Southern Europe. It is perhaps convenient for us to delude ourselves in believing that it's the South that has had problems. Well, just look, first of all, at the history of countries that used to be troubled. The country where I'm now based in, the UK, huge transformation in the 1970s, very similar problems in terms of the relations and the links between the public and the private. Germany and the transformations that it had to do in the 1990s, including all the structural changes that Greece is battling about. But most interestingly, countries that we think about as we look at where we would like to be. Sweden and its ongoing problem of transformation that is still going on with a new election of the Prime Minister. Or perhaps more impressively yet, Latvia, that managed to be 24% down in its GDP. It was in a worse state than Greece was, 2008, 2009, now is the fastest growing economy in Europe. It is not about the South or the North. It is about the seriousness that we have in thinking about it. A couple of weeks ago in Davos, actually, I put together a session on precisely that, and both the Prime Ministers of Sweden and Latvia and the President of the European Parliament were there together with people from Southern European countries. And the challenge there was about the reform process and what is it that stops the reform process. And I think that what you realize when you start looking more seriously at it is that you need first clarity in terms of what you want to achieve, or what is the diagnosis, but most importantly, action. And the action that you need to take is not an action in terms of principles. It is an action that is very specific, that looks at how you're going to be changing the structures of the administration and how you will use, how you will harness the energy of the people, the common opinion that can then start pushing and directing the reform process. And I think that this is where Repower Greece is invaluable, in creating something that can be the counterweight to the etatism that we're suffering from. And this is something that we tried about a year and a half ago, the team based in the London Business School, in putting together the Redesign Greece initiative, which is more focused on the rethinking of the public administration. And I think that what we need to do is to try to see how we might be able to combine them. So one of the things that we're hoping that we're going to be doing, announcing in a month or two, is getting some money and creating a prize for a hackathon. And the hackathon is going to try to address one of the challenges that we have in public administration, which is that we don't know what the heck is happening. We don't know who's efficient and who's not. Which aforia is stealing and which is giving money. Which local school is good in terms of how much money they get and what the results they get. And without getting that, without having the incentives, even the social incentives, by having the results out there, not waiting for the government, but pushing for the government, substituting for where it is actually lacking, and empowering people, and giving them perhaps the incentives in terms of monetary incentives as well, to get concrete ideas on how we can put pressure to this sleepy, monolithic instrument that has been slowing things down. And I think that this is what we need. We do not need theory about stuff. We need concrete suggestions on how it is that public administration, the intersection of public administration and the private sector, and also the way that the private sector competes, because we're quite dreadful of the competition and competition law in Greece as well, can be improved. And I think that what we can harness is the transparency that the social media provide, the unification of the communication platform, and the simplicity of the message. Because our big objective and the plan that we should all have is to take the frustration, to take the energy and the goodwill and turn it into something concrete, not something theoretic. And I think that for that, it's a great initiative, and I hope that we will keep going at it. Thank you very much.